In the middle of the 20th century, when the United States was torn apart by segregation and racial injustice, a single voice rose above the chaos, carrying not the sound of anger or revenge, but the melody of hope. That voice belonged to Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist preacher from Atlanta who would become the most iconic figure in the struggle for civil rights, and one of the greatest apostles of nonviolence the world has ever known. His life, his dream, and his unwavering faith in the power of love over hate would change not only America, but also inspire generations around the globe to believe that justice could be achieved without the sword. To understand King, we must first look at the world he was born into. Born on January 15, 1929, in a segregated South where Black Americans were denied basic human rights, young Martin grew up surrounded by the harsh realities of racism. His childhood was shaped by the humiliation of Jim Crow laws that dictated where his family could live, where he could go to school, which water fountains he could drink from, and even which seats on a bus he could occupy. Yet from an early age, he was also nurtured by the wisdom of faith, growing up in the Ebenezer Baptist Church where his father preached. The Bible's message of justice, along with the teachings of Jesus on love for one's enemies, laid the foundation for the ideals that would later guide his leadership. King's education was as remarkable as his passion. A brilliant student, he entered college at just 15 and went on to earn his Ph.D. in theology. While studying, he encountered the works of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the Indian leader who had led his nation's struggle for independence through nonviolent resistance. Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, or truth force, profoundly influenced King. He saw in Gandhi's example the power of peaceful protest to confront even the mightiest oppressors, and he recognized that this principle could be the key to dismantling racial injustice in America. The mid-1950s brought King from the pulpit to the streets of Montgomery, Alabama, where he first emerged as a national leader. When Rosa Parks, a black seamstress, refused to give up her bus seat to a white passenger in December 1955, it sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, a mass protest against segregated public transportation. King, then only 26, was chosen to lead the movement. For 381 days, the black community of Montgomery walked miles to work rather than ride the buses. Despite threats, arrests, and the bombing of his own home, King urged his followers to remain nonviolent, to meet hate with dignity. Their perseverance eventually led to a Supreme Court ruling that struck down bus segregation, proving that collective, peaceful action could dismantle unjust laws. This victory was only the beginning. King became the face of the broader civil rights movement, leading marches, sit-ins, and boycotts throughout the South. At every step, he preached the doctrine of nonviolence, not as weakness or submission, but as a courageous refusal to mirror the hatred of the oppressor. He often said, "We must meet hate with love. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." His words were not mere rhetoric, they were the strategy of a man who understood that violence would only breed more violence. Perhaps the defining moment of King's leadership came in 1963, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Standing before the Lincoln Memorial, he delivered the speech that would echo through history, "I have a dream." In it, he spoke of his vision of a day when children of all races would join hands, when the sons of former slaves and former slave owners would sit together at the table of brotherhood. That speech turned him into a moral beacon not only for Americans but for people worldwide who longed for justice and equality. King's philosophy of nonviolence was not naive idealism. It demanded extraordinary discipline and faith. Marchers were trained to endure beatings without retaliation, to accept imprisonment without bitterness, and to love those who cursed them. This radical ethic of love came from both his Christian convictions and the Gandhian tradition he had embraced. He often reminded his followers that their struggle was not against individuals but against the system of injustice itself. His influence reached the highest levels of government. The protests and campaigns he led helped pave the way for landmark legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed segregation and protected the right to vote for Black Americans. For his efforts to fight racial inequality through nonviolent resistance, King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 at the age of 35, becoming the youngest recipient at the time. In his Nobel lecture, he warned that humanity faced the choice between nonviolence or non-existence, highlighting that the lessons of peace and justice extended far beyond America's borders. Yet King's life was not without hardship or controversy. As he began to speak out against poverty, economic inequality, and the Vietnam War, he faced growing criticism from politicians, the media, and even some within his own movement. But he remained steadfast, believing that true justice required confronting all forms of oppression. His final years were marked by a growing sense of urgency and the understanding that the dream was still far from realized. Tragically, on April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, while supporting striking sanitation workers. His death shook the world, but his legacy endured. Streets, schools, and a national holiday now bear his name, but more importantly, his philosophy of nonviolence continues to inspire movements for justice across the globe, from South Africa's struggle against apartheid to the peaceful protests for democracy in various parts of the world. King's message resonates today more than ever. In a world still grappling with racism, hatred, and conflict, his belief that love is a powerful force for change reminds us that peace is not passive. It requires courage, discipline, and unwavering faith in the dignity of every human being. His dream remains unfinished, challenging us all to keep building the beloved community he envisioned, a world where justice rolls down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. To listen to the story of Martin Luther King Jr. is to be reminded that one person's vision, rooted in compassion and nonviolence, can alter the course of history. His life proves that true power lies not in domination, but in the ability to awaken conscience, to transform enemies into allies, and to guide humanity toward its better angels. King's dream was not his alone, it was and remains a call to action for all of us, to rise above fear and hatred, and to keep striving for a world where freedom and justice belong to everyone.